What is up, y'all? Today on the show, we got an awesome guest. Her name is Auston Kim. You may know that because she plays for Vanderbilt University, but then she also played in the Augusta National Women's Amateur and was in the top 5 going into the final round. And so I know her. I met her a long time ago when she first showed up as a freshman. So I said, hey, what the heck? Let's give her a call, see if she'll do a podcast. She said she was more than happy to chat. So sit back, take notes. Auston is a phenomenal golfer. She's a phenomenal person. And, enjoy her journey and enjoy what it was like for her when she went and played in one of the women's biggest amateur events to date. Let's go.
All right, ladies and gentlemen. Today on the show, we have one of Vanderbilt's finest, Auston Kim. Auston showed up to Vanderbilt while I was teaching there at the Legends Club way back in the day, and she is now a rising senior, and she's about to finish her collegiate career. But Auston has done a phenomenal job playing for the Commodores over her career thus far, and has even had the opportunity to play in the Augusta National Women's Amateur Championship this year. And so having watched her play so well also, by the way, and it was a great opportunity, I thought, to maybe circle back with her, have a chat, because I hadn't seen her about a year since I left. And remember when she showed up, and one of the finest ball strikers I saw on the team when she walked through that door. So without further ado, Auston, say hello to everybody, and why don't we talk about how did you even get into golf?
Well, hello. Thanks for having me, Matt. For me, golf has always been such a big part of my life. My dad got me started. I had always tagged along with my sister and dad to practice, and at first it was something that I just do for fun. I was kind of like that kid running around, kicking and just like putting, I don't know, who knows where. And then a few years later, I figured, oh, this is actually pretty interesting, pretty fun. Why not just play full time? So a few years later, I ended up playing competitively more often. I was probably about 9 at this point, and I just got hooked, and I just wanted to play all the time. My dad really motivated me to keep practicing every single day and get better as I grew older. And college golf was always on my mind from middle school because my sister had committed around that age. Yeah, she committed when she was about a freshman.
Wow.
And I was in elementary and middle school, and I figured, why not do the same thing, because it's such a good career path, and golf is such a rewarding sport. So why not keep pursuing the same thing, and it'll pay off later on. So
definitely,
I ended up thinking about college, played a lot competitively in high school, and I committed to Vanderbilt in my junior year, heading into my senior year, and just kept working my tail off. And once I got to school, I had a great time. I've been having a great time so far.
Oh yeah, Greg is an awesome coach, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he's solid, and I think I was always impressed with the coaching staff at Vanderbilt while I was there teaching, at the club, and the limited interaction I had with you guys as you guys were in town, and just I would just be picking your brains left and right. But obviously, like going back to like the recruitment process, when your sister got recruited versus when you got recruited, the rules were like in flux, and now they're completely different probably from when you were being recruited. But when you were before you were getting into that recruitment phase, what were some of the things that you did as like a junior golfer that you felt maybe like your friends weren't doing, or maybe something that you were doing that was a little bit different that kind of set you apart?
I had the advantage of knowing that I was a hard worker, and I had a really good work ethic, and I had parents that really supported me. And that last part is something that I still keep in mind today, because I was a very fortunate athlete, very fortunate student athlete. You just have to have a really good support system, but also you need to be your best friend and really work at the things that you want to achieve. Like you need to set some goals and be really specific with yourself and honest with yourself. Like what do I want to accomplish this year? What do I want to accomplish in the next few months? What do I want to accomplish in the next few years? So if you have those things in the back of your mind and you keep building on those blocks, they'll add up over time, and you can achieve goals that you probably thought weren't possible a few years prior.
Well, and that's having teach, or taught as many junior golfers as I teach every day. There's always that sign of a kid that has that self accountability, like kind of like what you're talking about. That ability to kind of sit there and really focus on a task and set a mission, and not just walk to the driving range, beat balls, goof off for an hour. And there's times and places we gotta be fun and have all those silly little games. At the same time, you gotta be serious. And when you were, you said you were at a young age when you kind of realized like you really liked it. Your sister, got recruited, went and played, and so you kind of saw it at an earlier age, the level that was required to play at like a Vanderbilt, because you ain't no slouch going to Vanderbilt. So what was that realization like when you're like, okay, I might have enough talent to play at a level like Vanderbilt? And then how did you determine Vanderbilt was your home?
Well, for me personally, I think I've always known that long game is my strongest suit. I really like hitting the ball. I like hitting the ball far, but that always meant that the other parts of my game weren't as strong. And once I actually realized that, after multiple tournaments where I'd hit the ball really well and then can't putt or can't chip, that's when I realized, oh, I have these two parts of my game that I really need to focus on for the next few years before I commit somewhere, before I start college.
Right.
So once I realized that, I had two big things on my plate that I really needed to work on if I wanted to hit that next level. And seeing my sister perform at school and what her schedule was like, what she did, how often she traveled, that was when I realized that if I wanted to do the same thing as her, and if I wanted to compete at the highest level, I needed to really become a more well-rounded athlete, a more well-rounded person in general, especially going into high school and knowing that the curriculum was going to be harder. Balancing everything would be more of a challenge. So that's when I told myself I need to buckle down and work on the things that I really need to work on.
Yeah, I mean, it's always interesting to watch the freshman class come in for like colleges. I've taught a lot of players that have gone to college. I've watched all the Vanderbilt freshman classes roll in before I left, and you can always kind of see like who is struggling with the class load and who's handling it okay. And I think a lot of it has to do with what you're used to before you show up, right? I mean, if you're already pretty accustomed to time management, dedicating your time to getting your classwork done and all that, and then the big problem is when you get to college, it's like in high school you have 8 hours of class or 7 hours of class where you're in the school. In college you got like 3 hours on a Monday, and then you're off to like maybe 3 more hours on a Tuesday, and then you're like, got a lot of free time right now that I can either go play video games, go shopping, hang out, whatever. So what are some of your tips that you'd have for kids as they get to college? Like, how did you plan your week? Because obviously, you got 20 some odd hours that you get with the team, but then a lot of it has to be done on your own. So how did you manage that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the first week I got to school, I think the biggest difference between high school and college was that your professors don't really care about you. Honestly, like if you're a freshman going into college and you're taking big big lecture hall classes, your professor is pretty much seeing you for 3 hours a week.
Yep.
There's hundreds of students in the same class, and he's teaching like a course load that is built toward those hundreds of students in a lecture hall. So it's different from high school in the fact that your professors aren't going to remind you about homework or assignments that are due that week or due that month. So college is a lot of personal responsibility. It's a lot of balancing. It's a lot of time management. And I'm sure a lot of kids hear about this from their parents or other people who are in college right now. but I mean, I'm telling the truth, and it's something that it's something you have to figure out yourself.
Oh yeah.
Because once you're in college, it's kind of like you're in the middle of the ocean, and it sounds scary, but that's why so many people grow up in these 4 years, because it's something that you have to handle. You have to build your own support system. You have to build your own schedule. And for me, freshman fall was honestly the hardest like time period of my life, trying to figure out stuff, because I didn't have those professors who reminded me about stuff that's due that week. I had to buy my own planner and figure stuff out and write everything down, because that's how I remember things. I can't just remember things off the top of my head. I have to
Right.
write everything down and tell myself that this is due on this date. And I also had to figure out how to study and keep up with golf at the same time, because everyone is different in that aspect as well.
Right.
I love to come to practice, but it also meant that I had to figure out how much time to stay there and how much time that I would spend in study hall, because I was also a student.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, building those study habits are really crucial, because I didn't have as much time as other students who were enrolled in the same class as I was, because they had all day to study after class. But I also had to go to practice, had to go to workouts, had to figure out what I was doing the next day with my team.
Or
So
traveling
just
5 weeks.
Yeah, exactly. So figuring out, what I had to do that day, what I had to do the next day and that week, just knowing ahead of time what I had to do, and if I could get homework done ahead of time, if I was traveling like the next few days, then doing that to the best of my ability, and also balancing sleep on top. So there was a lot of stuff on my plate freshman year.
Yeah. No, I mean, you're right though. I remember I went to Mississippi State, and I remember when I first walked in one of those big lecture calls, there's like 100 some odd people in there, and you're like, this person will never know who I am. I'm just a number.
Mm-hmm.
But then on top of that, you're right. The syllabus thing, where I was an utter failure at that my freshman fall. Like, they handed a sheet of paper. Here's everything due for the year. And I was like, great. And just threw it behind me. I was like, okay, what's next? And like the next week you miss like 3 homework assignments. And you're like, oh man, I better go find that piece of paper again. But
Mm-hmm.
it's always it's always an adjustment. But at the same time, when you're a student athlete, there's a little bit of an advantage there, because you have such great resources with the coach, the study halls, they have tutors. I mean, you got some nice things to tap into. That's why I always encourage students and kids that are thinking about playing, like, go play, because you can have such a better experience at college because of all the resources that are available to you as a student athlete than if you just went by yourself. But obviously Vanderbilt is not exactly well, let's just say it's not exactly a Mississippi State when it comes to like level of education, because I wasn't getting into Vanderbilt. Let's put it to you that way. They barely let me in at Mississippi State. But what's been like the culture for you as far as being at Vanderbilt, with like knowing that you're at a university with a very high level of expectations in study and degree, but then also playing for a team that's expected to play very well at the same time. And that's a lot of weight to tote around every day, especially coming in as a freshman.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't think I fully realized how fortunate I was to come into an institution like this when I was a freshman, because I was very focused on the golf side of things. And I think I fully realized that my sophomore year, because Vandy has such a wide variety of people from all over the place. And that is just so valuable for a student. Basically a student athlete, because you have your team, I have my girls, I had so many other people on this team who came from different parts of the world, different families, different backgrounds. Wow. And I got to mingle with them basically every day, got to know them better, and we've become really tight. But also, when you think about academia, there are just so many students from different parts of the world who also come from different backgrounds. And if you want to experience everything about this university to its fullest extent, you just have to get to know other people besides the athletic sphere. And I've really gotten to utilize that. And I've also gotten to know a lot of people who are basically from different parts of the globe or different parts of the country. And I talk to them, I get really close to them, and it's just so fascinating to see what they believe in, what like what they preach, what kind of different backgrounds that they come from. And it's really helped me understand that no one is the same,
Right.
but also the way that you were raised really affects what you believe in. And getting to know that has really broadened my perspective in multiple ways.
Yeah.
And I've been really fortunate to have that sphere outside of athletics, outside of golf. So although golf is such a big part of my life, getting to know all these different people in my major department or just different friends across the student body has been such a fulfilling experience so far.
Absolutely. I mean, it's a melting pot when you go to college. I mean, it really is. And it's amusing to say the least, because I know it was a culture shock for me when I went to Mississippi State, and there's people from all over that came down for the PGA program for there too. So there's other Pennsylvania guys like me and all kinds of stuff. But when you think about like who you looked up to as a junior golfer, and as you stand here now as almost a senior in college, who were some of those people that stood out to you the most as influential into your decision making to become who you are?
hmm Well, primarily it was my sister August because she had gone through 4 years of school before I'd even stepped foot at Vanderbilt. And just seeing her grow as a person and seeing her progress as an athlete was truly incredible to witness. And she finished out her career really well at Purdue. And just being able to observe the way she progressed those 4 years was honestly one of the most incredible things that a younger sister could ask for, especially when she was heading into school and not knowing what it would be like at all, because everyone's experiences are different.
Sure.
And once I got to Vanderbilt, everyone who was older than me, basically, so Courtney and Abby, and even now Louise and Morgan and Virginia, basically everyone who is older than me has left some impression. And I've just been so fortunate to be able to have those girls on the team and ask them questions, get to learn from them. And they have just been such a great support system for me because I'm a younger sibling,
Right.
and having someone older has been so helpful these past few years.
Makes you feel a little more at home in that regard. Totally. When so let's talk more about the golf game now. So like when you showed up to Vanderbilt, I mean, you've had a great run since day one, and playing and winning golf tournaments. What has that experience been for you on the golf course? Like, what was the biggest thing that changed when you went from a high school golf, even like AJGA national level junior golf, to college golf? What are some of the things that you noticed that was it more difficult? Was it about the same? Like, what were some bigger challenges you faced when you got on the golf course?
Well, when I played my first college event, it was just so striking and seeing how basically similar everything was. I mean, when you play a tournament, you're playing a golf course, and that aspect is just similar across every single tournament that you play. You're just playing golf, basically.
Right.
And when I played like my first ever hole of golf for a college tournament, I walked off the first hole and I was like, this is what I've been doing my entire life. So that just gave me a sense of ease heading into, that week and the next 2 weeks after. And I suppose one of the biggest challenges was managing expectations once I started playing well and realizing that I could achieve something my freshman year. So I played my first 3 events fairly well, and when I was hitting my fourth, the last one of the fall, that was when I kind of had another realization that, oh, I can play well. And it started getting into the should area. Like, I should be playing well now that I've performed. And understanding that in hindsight was probably a big or a key realization, that I shouldn't be telling myself I should be playing well, because that definitely hinders performance, especially when you're entering like a new environment, or you're suddenly starting to improve. So when I started that spring, I told myself expectations shouldn't be terribly high, because although you're performing, it's not something that you should be expecting. It should be something that you're working toward every single week. So,
yeah, that's a great insight though, because I feel too many, like, especially freshmen, too many freshmen show up on campus and like, especially at playing at a high level like Vanderbilt does, like you have to prove you belong a little bit, right? There's a little something on the shoulder sitting there, kind of going, man, I didn't shoot a sub 75 round today. I'm not good enough to be here, or whatever. And that should word is a strong word to throw into the mix of a sentence when you're talking about expectations. And I think you're hit the nail on the head. Like, striving to be somebody over the course of time is a lot easier to achieve than I should have done this. I should be here. I should be that. I couldn't imagine having that much pressure on myself.
Yeah. It's just, I know there are a lot of people like me being a perfectionist, and sometimes that I would like thought suddenly shifts to I should. And that's when things start to get a little bit more difficult. So recognizing that pattern and being able to stop it in its tracks as soon as possible is, the best thing to do.
Yeah, and that's, I have that conversation a lot with kids when we talk about like playing, right? And it's like, you have to acknowledge there's out of bounds or a water hazard in front of you. You can't just ignore the water hazard. Like, that's just as bad as focusing only on it, right? And so what I kind of tell them is like, look, if you're like, because a lot of kids I teach in that high school age are learning to drive, and I say, look, if you find yourself on the highway, cornered between two semis and a 3-lane highway, and you're in the middle, do you think you're gonna like sit there and stare at the tires of the tractor trailer as you're like driving in between the two, or are you gonna stare in front of you and just try and drive straight between the two of them and try to, you recognize it there, but you're not gonna like focus on those tires? And like, oh yeah, that's a good point. I'm like, yeah, well, that's like staring at a bunker, right? Or staring at the water hazard, or staring at the out of bounds. Like, you gotta know it's there, and you have to have the self-compassion to say, okay, yeah, I thought about it. It's there. I got it. I'm going to go back to my target, or I'm going to, it's like, okay, yeah, I thought about this is my lowest round ever in college, or oh, I'm going to win the golf tournament. It's like, yeah, okay, I recognize I thought about that, but now I need to X, right? Execute next shot, execute next routine, execute whatever, and just keep moving forward. And, that's something that as you get better in college and as you get to the professional circuits, right, that's just the next shot, and it's all you can control, and you can control everything up until the ball leaves the face. After that, you're a spectator. As soon as that ball's in the air, you're watching like everybody else. Now, well, early days at Vanderbilt, I remember you having a lot of like kind of like Zoomish lessons with your coach, working on the swing and tightening things up. As you've progressed, to where you are now, how much of it is, like kind of working through stuff versus trying to find more performance-based, practices to tighten up your game to be ready for the course? What are you working on right now?
Well, it's one thing feeling like your swing is perfect, and it's another to feel like you're ready to perform. And that has been such a key distinction for me lately, because your game is hardly ever going to be perfect. I think I can recall 1 week of perfection like in my entire golfing career. And like, you're rarely going to be in a position where everything feels perfect. Like every single part of your game feels like
solid.
There's nothing wrong with it. Yeah, solid, exactly. So it's just so important to have a game that's just ready to perform, even if something feels a little bit off. or you don't feel as solid as you want, you just have to accept the fact that, I'm human. I'm not going to be perfect all the time. And being able to perform with such a hard sport that golf is, being ready to perform is probably your best heading into the week. Like it's the best thing that you can ask for, having that state of mind that's ready to fight, and also being physically ready to swing the club and chip and putt, because I personally believe that your mental game is 95% of performing well. So being able to understand that, my game might not feel perfect as it has been before, but I don't want to compare myself to other times. I don't want to hold myself up to an unreasonable standard heading into competition where everyone else is ready to fight, basically.
Right.
So you just have to accept that fact, and a B or C game is sometimes to be expected because you can't control that kind of stuff. But it's playing in tournaments is honestly carrying what you have and performing to the best of your ability with what you have.
No, and that's such a big statement, because I mean, I hear it time and time again from like professionals that win, that have that realization, like, I realized I didn't have to be perfect to win, right? Or like the Jordan Spieth of the world, like he realized, he didn't have a best week when he was young before he turned pro, and realized that he could still make the cut at a PGA Tour event, not playing his best, right? And then he realized he could do it. And I say that after we just had the Corn Ferry event here at the Grove, and 2 17-year-olds qualify. It's like, oh my God, I can't even imagine. But so, what would you say is one of the biggest things you learn from playing tournament golf that has, changed the way that you play? Like, what was your big learning moment?
Well, when I think about my highs and my lows, when I won my second collegiate event, the beginning of my sophomore year, that was a week when everything was like performing and firing on all cylinders.
Yeah.
But I also knew that I made a few mistakes and I wasn't performing to the best of my ability, yet that felt like the best week ever to me. And this semester, I did not perform as well as I wanted to, but I'm also using it as a learning experience as to what I need to avoid moving forward and what I want to work on. So going back to that last question you asked me, where sometimes people feel like they're not prepared or they want to feel perfect heading into events. For me, competition, especially this semester, has shown me what I really need to work on and what I need to improve on, especially when I'm under pressure. Like if you're under pressure and your shots mean something, that's when your habits start to reveal themselves and what your weak points are sometimes. And I mean, in the moment, it's tough to experience loss and hardship, but it also makes you stronger. It also tells you what you need to work on heading into your next week or next event. So if you don't win, it's a learning experience. You never lose. And that has just been, something very important to me lately.
Well, that brings up a good point, because it's, I get asked a lot, like, how can I prepare for this, that, and the other? And it's like, you can only do so much, but until you're standing on the 18th tee box with a 1-shot lead with the person running you down, and there's out of bounds on either side, and it's a 30-yard wide fairway, and you guys stand up there and hit driver because it's like 450 a par 4. You're like, you just gotta get up there and do it sometimes, and then that's when, and then you can look back and go, okay, I handled that situation great. I hit a great drive, hit the shot, made par, forced their hand, right? Or I felt I lost feeling in my hands. I don't know what happened, and like the panic button came in, right? So, I think it's always interesting because, as you, like you said, competition is the big revealer. because it's going to show you your lowest level of training, because that's what's going to start showing itself up, or those little weaknesses are going to start slowly kind of tearing it down a little bit. And so, how well do you endure that allows you to have the perseverance and the grind, the grit to continue forward. And, if you let, I tell a lot of kids, like, if you let the number on the leaderboard define who you are at the end of the day, man, you are in for a rough rodeo in this sport, because that number is always going to be different.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So you've had such a stellar career thus far, and it earns you the rank and the ability to go tee it up at Augusta National, right? And so let's start at the beginning. What was it like getting the letter in the mail saying, Auston, you're going to Augusta? What was happening?
So I wasn't even home. I actually got the letter sent to my home address, and I was practicing, and I got a text from my dad all of a sudden, and it was a picture of the letter. And I kind of smiled. I sent him a response, "Oh, cool." And then I went back to hitting balls.
The most nonchalant ever. I love it.
Yeah. So
did you kind of expect that?
Home,
did you expect that invitation to come in the mail because of your ranking? Like, were you already kind of like thinking you were in, and that's why it wasn't so much of a surprise?
Yeah, I was expecting it, but I was definitely happy. I mean, I sound nonchalant now, but I was definitely happy, and I talked to him after. But yeah, it was pretty cool. Nothing that I've experienced before, and getting to hold the letter and see the wax that sealed the letter and the logo on it. It was beautiful.
That's awesome. And so you get your invite. What were the next steps? I mean, obviously you don't play Augusta till the end, but you get a chance to do the practice round. You get all the, I heard it's like a swagged out event. You get all kinds of great goodies too. So you got your invite. It's now Augusta National Women Amateur Week. Let's start at the beginning. What, where do we go from there?
Mm-hmm. So my dad and I headed down to Augusta, and we got there probably a day before the first practice round for Champions Retreat. And I was still in the middle of school and doing homework and all that. But he and I talked on the way down there, like, yeah, it's a very tricked out event. It's very hyped up. The best of the best are here among amateur players, and they're going to treat you well, but it's just like anything else that I've done. It's another golf tournament. It's another golf course. And I didn't want to psych myself out just because everything was just on a different level, quote unquote.
Sure.
And when I played my practice round, I just made sure that I wasn't looking around with my eyes wide open, because it's something that I've done before. I've played hard courses before. I've played in terrible conditions before. It was absolutely freezing. And like I've seen a lot of water. I've seen a lot of out of bounds. Like this wasn't anything new to me. So I didn't want to, I didn't want to be the person who was afraid, because I knew that the course posing a tough challenge would make people scared.
Right.
And I didn't want to be the person who was scared. And I also knew that it was my first time there, and the girls were going to be really tough and post their best scores. So for me, it was just managing expectations, especially, and telling myself, this is my first time here. I will most definitely make mistakes. Like that will happen. So I also told myself, like, yes, it would be nice to play on the weekend at Augusta, not just the practice round, but I just want to take it shot by shot and just play my best, basically.
So having, being a Vanderbilt backed, athlete at that event, did like Brant reach out to you, or did you get a chance to talk to anybody that has experience at the golf course at Augusta National to kind of like, say, hey, Auston, here's a couple tips or a couple tricks to, or during your practice round, anything like that?
Well, Coach Allen told me about all the undulation.
Yeah.
I didn't realize how steep the hills on 9 and 18 were.
Crazy.
And yeah, it was insane. And I also had a really fantastic caddy at Augusta who helped me out at Champions Retreat and at the club. So just having that insight and playing the practice round and getting to understand the course the day before was
pretty big.
It was pretty big.
Yeah. What was, I mean, you went to Augusta for your practice round. You know, you said don't walk around with your eyes wide open, but it's got to be hard when you get to like that tee box where you have 1 tee, 9 green, 18 green, 10 tee, the little practice putting green up there in the corner, you know, and you stand atop the hill, you know, with the cabins behind you and you look out over the golf course. I mean, is there any better view in golf?
Yeah. I mean, I told myself that during the Champions practice round, but when I got to Augusta, it was a mix of let's have fun and, you know, absorb everything around me, but also we're here to do a job. So It was kind of a mix of both. And man, it was so pretty. It was absolutely beautiful.
Yeah. Was it like the most pure golf course you've teed it up on? As far as like
absolutely. Absolutely.
When I got there to watch, I went down in 16 and watched the Sunday round. I wanted to like lay on the grass and just take out like a chunk the size of my body home with me to plant in my yard. So when you rolled through the practice rounds for both golf courses, you know, this is a good opportunity for kids to kind of take notes. Like you haven't played either golf course. They're both known for the difficulty levels and trickery. What do you do in your practice prep that allows you to have the biggest advantage in tournament day?
Well, one thing that I've learned from coaches and other players is that when you play a practice round before tournaments, you basically have one chance to see everything. And that's the hardest part, because if you hit it in one spot during the practice round, you can hit it 3 other spots during the tournament. So for me, it's just trying to figure out the best place to land my tee shot, the best place to land my shot on the greens. And then once I get to the green, figuring out what the major misses are and probably chipping a few. And then just looking at the greens, if there are any major shelves, like where I should land based on pin positions, and then basically where I don't want to miss, because if there are any very big misses where I short side myself or I just have a bad miss, it'll probably be impossible to get up and down. That's just wasting a stroke there. So being very mindful of where not to miss and understanding where the smart plays are.
Right. So when you're talking like figuring out where you want to land your tee ball in relation to like the green, are you figuring like, okay, the hole might be cut here, so I want to be on this side of the fairway, or like how are you assessing your tee shot to prep you for your approach?
It's basically, where is the fattest part of the fairway? Are there any bunkers left or right? Do I want to be short or long of these bunkers so that I just don't dump my ball in there all 3 days? I just, honestly, for me, it's just where is the safest play and where is the spot where I can most likely make birdie on this hole.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's kind of an interesting strategy that I've always had to try to convince, junior golfers and even, my competing amateur golfers is like, driver is pretty much the solution unless the fairway gets too narrow. It's like where the game's at right now. And like, well, wasn't 3-wood a straighter play? I'm like, well, the sweet spot on your driver is the size of your 3-wood right now. So I'd probably keep driver in my hand. Yeah. Especially when you're under the gun, you got some nerves and you're like, man, I need the biggest club head in my hands because I can't feel my hands and I just want to be able to hit the ball. When you got through the first couple rounds, you make the cut, and you are not just making the cut, you are in contention at the national championship. And you look up at the end of day 2 and you see your name at the top of the leaderboard. What's that like?
And I saw my name, and after I finished my second round, and I looked at my sister, and I was like, I'm starving. It's been a very long day. So, I mean, it was a good feeling because my hard work was paying off, but also I didn't want to let it get to my head or affect what I've been doing or what
Right.
I'd been doing that week.
Right.
So it's just accepting it, like, oh, I've been playing well so far. It's been paying off, but there's also more work to be done. So I just went and ate lunch and practiced after, and
Man,
that
you
was
are
the end
just,
of the day.
man, you are just so collected. I'd be sitting there. I'd have a hard time eating a sandwich if I saw my name at the top of that leaderboard. And so you obviously you're getting the nod to play the weekend at Augusta, and you're like top 5, I think, going into that, right? Like you're like 5th place at that point. And so, you have a chance and pretty solid front nine. What are your emotions going to the first tee at Augusta National with a chance to win the whole dang thing?
Man, I think that was probably the most nervous I'd been. Like, yeah, teeing it up on number 1. Man, just I think that's why people want to compete at the highest level, and I really understood that, like the feeling of excitement and pressure, and knowing that you can win, and just everybody watching you at the first tee, and like the amount of buzz that was there was incredible. And it was unlike anything I'd experienced before. And the first 10 holes were a challenge, but I was having a lot of fun. And the last 8 holes were very difficult, frankly, because I'd started putting pressure on myself, like, oh, I can definitely win this thing. Oh, I started to think about the future and dwell on things that happened in the past. And those are habits that usually come out when I'm not focused on what I want to do right.
Right.
So even though I'd had a ton of experience and understood what I wanted to achieve that week, the pressure is just that strong. And sometimes your mind reverts back to bad habits when you're not vigilant enough. So it just told me things that I need to work on if I want to keep progressing.
Well, I mean, like I said, it was exciting for me because, I knew you personally before, and I saw you at the top of the leaderboard. I was sitting watching with my family that round, and my wife played college golf, so did her sister. So, we're a golf family, right? So we had it on TV, and I pulled it up for Sunday's round, and I was like, holy crap, I know her, right? So I was following along shot by shot. I was rooting for you. I mean, it was awesome to watch you, and I think being a coach, but also a fan of who you are and your game. It was fun for me to watch because I say, hey, look, I've seen this girl hit balls in the driving range. I've seen her, shots around the green, putt, play. I mean, so I was pulling for you hard. I guess my bad luck just rubbed off on you too much for the back nine, I guess.
No.
but you brought up an interesting point when you talked about, you kind of had a dawning moment of, hey, I could do something here. I might be able to win it. And you kind of got the cart in front of the horse, if you will, a little bit. And but like you said, you recognize that now, and you've got, identified that as something that goes on. But I can't imagine you've ever felt that level before it, even at like playing for Vanderbilt at the at the SECs or regionals and all that stuff. I mean, it had to be a whole nother level of realization, if you will, than anything you've ever tasted before. Would that be fair?
Definitely.
And so, again, it's just like you said, it's a learning curve, and you took it for what it was. But the big question was, for me, is as I ask you this one, is like, when you look back at the entirety of the experience, the good, the bad, the ugly, and you kind of reflect on it, and maybe have another chance to go back before you turn pro. What was the most gratifying part of that experience while you were there that you walked away from and you felt the proudest about, that like you look back and say, man, I did blank?
Of course, it was a bit tough walking off 18 and realizing that I had a chance and I couldn't perform. But I am still so proud of myself for playing golf those first 2.5 rounds. Like, I put myself in contention. I was 3 over at one point during the first round, and I got it back down to even. I was under par at some point during the second round. Just the amount of mental and physical work that I put in during those 2 rounds, and being able to put myself near the top of the leaderboard heading into the last day, and really taking my time working on the small things that week, making sure that I was doing everything to the best of my ability. I don't see that week as a failure. I see that week as something that I've achieved unlike anything that I've achieved before. And I got to get a learning experience that unlike anything that I've experienced before. So it's a week that I really cherish, and I've probably had the best experience in my life in Augusta that week.
Absolutely. I mean, that's the way I, would have looked at it, is just like you said. I mean, and also in the sense of like, that could have been a once in a lifetime thing. I mean, it's not guaranteed you get to go back, and you'll always get to say that you teed it up at Augusta National with a chance to win on a weekend, which in itself is just freaking cool. You know what I mean? And so I think, again, as the outsider and having known you from before, I mean, I was straight up proud of you for your finish. I sent you a message on Instagram right after I got done watching you. I was like, hell of a round, kid. I mean, you did everything you could. And, I think that the thing that, I'm excited to see for you is, like, I think that was kind of like, you kind of twinkled the toes a little bit into the water of, like, what's it going to be like when I play against the best in the world? And, you already, in my opinion, have an advantage because you hit it, a great distance for, to trying to play professional golf at the LPGA level. And so, like you said, that's something you've always been good at. And now I think you've gotten the pressure test of, what does my mental game need to look like to perform at the highest level? And I see good things happening for you, kid. And so, like, we kind of talked about the front end, you're going to try to get your Q in to defer so you can finish your college career, and hopefully that works out. And then I think either way, at the end of your college run, you're going to go do some big stuff at the next level. So when you look back and you got 1 year left of Commodore golf, what do you want to do in this next year for Vandy that puts the final stamp for, for Auston Kim as a Vandy grad? What would complete the journey?
Well, I have my goals in mind, the ones that I write down before the year starts. After this semester, I really began to understood how difficult golf is. It's not an easy sport, So when you play well, it feels like you can achieve anything. But once you hit a hurdle, there are just so many factors at play that make it even more difficult than it is. So I know that I'm going to make mistakes. Right. I know that, it's not the easiest thing in the world, but having those goals in mind and it being my last year and understanding what I want to achieve as a student athlete, I think having all of those things in the back of my mind the entire year will help me have fun and help me work toward what I really want as a golfer, as a student, as someone who is just getting older every single year and keeping my future in mind. And professional golf is a different field altogether. But
yeah,
I want to achieve my goals while having a great time next year.
Oh yeah, and yeah, that was going to be like my parting word for you is, enjoy it would be the big thing I would say, is because, like I said, you only get to be in college for 4 or 5 years and compete at the game. You can be in college for as long as you want, but you only get 4 or 5 years to actually to play. But enjoy it, and at the same time, I know you're ambitious and you have goals and you have that competitive drive. but you gotta like take those small little moments as you finish it up and just kind of sit there at the end of 18, at the end of the second day, and just kind of look back and go, man, that's gonna be the last time I tee it up at this event as a Commodore, you know, and just kind of like enjoy that, just kind of soak that moment up, you know, and and so as we wrap up the podcast, and you know, I've kind of prefaced you this one already, you know, I always like to ask everybody like a little bit of a word of wisdom or a motivational kind of thing that they look up to that helps maybe inspire them to, you know, push through the hard times, or you know, keeps them, you know, on the tracks, you know. So what, you know, what do you do, or what do you tell yourself that kind of helps you keep pressing forward?
For me lately, it's been me trying to understand that you can't hit your next peak without being down at the valley first. And, you know, hardship is inevitable to anything that's worth achieving in life, especially in golf. Once again, it is incredibly difficult. Golf is super, super hard. And understanding that with the game that I love so much, of course, you know, if you have a difficult time or you're struggling, it's just the easy thing is to get up and say, I'm quitting. That's honestly like the easiest thing that you can say. But for people who dedicate so much time to the game and who honestly love it so much, there's a reason why you keep going back to the range, why you keep practicing for hours on end. And finding that passion within you and understanding what you can achieve in life, especially if you want to go to college and play for a team. That is something that can drive you every single day. And finding your passion, finding a reason why you want to play the game is so important.
Right.
And for me, you know, even if you find a hurdle or you're struggling, understanding that you can't experience the highs without the contrasting elements of the lows.
Right.
And honestly, working toward the best version of you is what pushes me every single day.
Well, yeah, I love that, and I love how you started it too. Is, you know, it's you're not always on the top of the mountain, and when you are on the top of the mountain, somebody's always trying to kick your butt off of it, because everybody's trying to get to that top. And you look at a chart of, you know, what growth looks like. There's a lot of ups and downs along the way, and like you said, you know, even for me, you know, there's been a lot of times where I've thought about, you know, the easy option, which is quitting, you know, and you just have to punt it, is all I tell you. Punt that option, because it's not the option you want. And when you look back and when you finally, you know, achieve that notch in your belt that you've been striving for, and it might take it, you know, and one of my mentors said it the best is, you know, you may not get there first, but it's just that you get there. Right. And, you know, you don't have to be the first one there, but as long as you get there and stay there, you win. And I think that's the biggest thing that a lot of young golfers don't realize is, like, their buddy's 13. Maybe she matured earlier, hits a ball farther. You know, what are you going to do about it? You just got to go out there and play your game, you know, and so what? They hit the ball farther, chip it better than she does, whatever, you know? And so the options, you know, start to look tough when you look like you're like, man, I can't keep up yet. Grind through it, push through that. And once you get on the other side, it's always worth it. And, you know, the other little side of this is, like, victories are short-lived. Like, you know, standing around the championship table, holding your belt for, you know, the 15 minutes of flash photography that you get, guess what? Next tournament starts the next day, and it's right back to business. And so if you don't enjoy that process, you're not going to enjoy the sweet victories that you get. That's the tough part. Well, Auston, I've enjoyed catching back up with you. It's been a long time. And
Same here.
And it's been, like I said, it's been a blast to watch you guys, you know, not just you, but all the ladies over there at Vanderbilt, plus the guys. You know, they're way, you know, just slouchier and just, you know, they just beat it around. You girls got it all tightened up, figured out. You guys got a good game plan. But I wanted to say thank you for coming on the show, sharing your wisdom, sharing us your story with being at Augusta National. And for those that, are going to listen to this podcast and go check you out, where can they find you on social media so they can kind of like watch your journey as you go through the game?
Mm-hmm. My Instagram is at Auston Kim, AUSTONKIM.
Easy. You must have had Instagram early.
Yeah, that special name really, gave me an advantage.
All right, kid. Thank you for your time today, and good luck this season. I can't wait to see what you got.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much, Matt.